Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to a wonderful Wednesday webinar. Well, the wisdom being dispensed tonight is from Nick Aldrich, and he's going to be talking about the National Emergency Briefing. Very, very important briefing coming up to MPs and leaders of society about the real situation that's actually going on with, the climate and the environment and environmental and social issues, and how we need to get our MPs activated to come. I think it's on the 27th of November. Nick is also a long-term environmental campaigner, co-founder of Climate Science Breakthrough. Hopefully you can tell us a little bit about that, but translating the science of climate change into shareable, actionable formats. Great words. Let's get into action, folks. Over to you, Nick. Thank you very much for coming.
Fantastic. I'm really quite amazed to be here, actually, having looked at your previous guests. I hope I can live up to that. Anyway, so yeah, I thought I'd do a few slides on climate science breakthrough. I'll share my screen for that, then maybe drop out quickly any questions, and then we'll dive into a national emergency briefing, if that works for everybody. So climate science breakthrough was the result of my existential crisis and panic over climate, I would say. Going back to 2023, I was working at the time in insurance and sustainability, nature safe insurance, for those of you who are in the Southwest. I'm based in Totnes. And it seemed apparent that the grown-ups weren't coming along, as you all know. And being an observer and an activist, but being an observer, you're slowly watching things crumble away. And the thing that struck me the most was when I tried to talk to people outside the bubble. So I would try and share, I remember a report by Chatham House, and I remember a clip from Kevin Anderson, the climate scientist, trying to share these things with people who were not in our sphere. People can't absorb it. It's dismissed. It's boring. It's science. It's dull. It's not interesting, or it's just too much to take in. And I remember thinking at the tail end of COVID and we all coming back to normal that because I work in comms, maybe there's a project here. What if we took Kevin Anderson, the climate scientist, who I want all the people in my network who aren't into climate to listen to, what if we took him and gave him the same treatment as we do for cars and fashion and clothes, and so give him the advertising treatment? Because the video that I remember sharing looked like one of my children had shot it at uni on their phone. That, the sound was awful, the lighting was awful, and yet this man is saying the most serious words on the planet. But who's going to take him seriously if they don't already, because of the context in which he's saying them? It doesn't look serious. This guy should be on the BBC. He should be packaged up in a way that gives it authenticity and seriousness. Funny I say seriousness because we ended up on comedy. But anyway, I don't have any experience in doing this whilst I've worked in comms, but I partnered with the Utopia Bureau, two guys who come out of the advertising industry who had moved into the same direction. And I literally threw my idea at them and said, look, we've got to take this climate scientist and we've got to package him in a way that could go viral. People will talk about, people will listen to. Ideas bounce around. And one day they said, what if we get him to be translated by a comedian? And that's where the idea was born. We started off with Kiri Pritchard McLean. She's the
Brilliant.
she's the only one who said yes to us because we had no track record. Who were we? And Kiri, we shot Kiri, and then that got us Jonathan Pye. And by shooting Jonathan Pye, later that year we got Nish, and then we got Joe. So it was
This is
a
brilliant. I
knock
remember
on.
this coming out. This is so fantastic. Condensed way
Fantastic,
of using comedy
fantastic.
to explain climate. I love it.
And do you know what
Brilliant.
was really important to me though? I mean, this was effectively what I was doing here was spending my kids' inheritance. So I'm comfortably off. And once you fully absorb 2, 3 degrees world, then anything that you're hoping to pass on is not going to exist or it's going to have no purpose. So this is me putting my own money in, thinking we've got to shift the public who aren't already in. And so it was really heartwarming when, Kiri agreed to do it and it snowballed along there. But one thing that was really critical for me was that we did the brutal truths. And I think that's something that XR were really good at right at the beginning. But if you've been watching the climate movement, what's been happening there is people have been saying, right, everyone, we've got to stop scaring people. We have to tell positive stories. Now, there's plenty of truth in that. But if the brutal truths are on the table, then we're not going to take this seriously enough. But I know why they're saying that, because who wants to sit down and listen to these awful facts that are really quite disturbing? So the whole premise that my creative colleagues came up with was just perfect, because you wrap up something in comedy. You can talk about the most awkward, difficult, complicated, uncomfortable things in the world. Comedians are trusted messengers, and they carry messages that we wouldn't normally perhaps talk about. So we did pretty well. We seemed to go everywhere. I think it was more or less a new take. Yellow Dot turned up at the same time and started doing climate comedy. So maybe we weren't the first, but it was certainly making waves enough for the press to actually talk about climate. And the quote on the top left, now Mr. Packham's probably the reason why this all worked well. Not long after we launched, the first tweet, his assistant was on to us saying, "Can you send us the film directly? We want to post it on all our channels." And he was getting 1 million views on his posts. And that is Chris is the reason why it went viral. And then other people joined in. I would say another key thing is in those days, Elon Musk hadn't ruined Twitter. So you could go viral because climate content was not being throttled. And then amazing people who were still active on Twitter were magnifying it. So we seem to get everywhere. But the high point really was getting on Good Morning Britain. Now, I'm sure plenty of you here have seen those awful clips of a brave campaigner being eviscerated by Richard Madeley on Good Morning Britain. It's a horrible thing to watch. Um, we we seem to reverse that because we sent Joe on with a climate scientist, and Richard Madeley was at his very best behaviour. And I think that was our biggest breakthrough because if it's that audience that we kind of need to get to, not the campaigners who are all scaring each other. So having done that, we in 24 we look for funding in the UK. Uh, couldn't come up with anyone interested to give us money. I think the way the climate funding movement works is they want things they can measure. Building toilets for people in Africa or vax. You can measure things that you can build or pay for. When it comes to trying to shift the culture, and let's face it, if we don't get more people pushing, we'll never override the vested interest. But when it comes to shifting the culture, the current funding situation in the UK was terrible. So we took a risk and we went over. We didn't literally go over, but we started investigating funding in the US. And within 3 months, we had the funds to make a US film. Um, we did eventually, and I did go to the US to film that. And I can tell you, I was so terrified about crossing the border into the USA that I entered the Brooklyn Half Marathon as my purpose for being there because it was on around the same time. Because I didn't want to get stopped at the border and them say, "What do you do?" And as soon as they go on my social media, then that will be the end of me. So I had to run a half marathon in order to film it. But we were lucky enough to get David Cross, cult figure in the comedy scene, and it's true to say we didn't do as well on social media. Or the whole X problem is really responsible for that. But what we did do is we got on CBS Mornings, which is like Good Morning Britain, but with a bigger audience. And again, because you have the comedian, but he's sat next to the climate scientist, in this case, Michael Oppenheimer, who was absolutely fantastic. Then it was a really positive interview that I think really had an impact. Um, we have got some funding in the pipeline for next year, and it's the midterms next year. So we are currently considering whether this is possible and investigating it. It's all going to come down to whether or not we can get a comedian, and it really does all rest on the comedian because we have the budget to make the film, but we don't have a promotional budget. So effectively, the comedian, their reach, their fame, their personality is the budget, is the promotional budget in effect. And in the current situation, I'm sure you'd agree, there's probably quite a few comedians and famous faces who maybe don't want to stick their head above the parapet. So between now and Christmas, we're going to be reaching out, and who knows, we might be successful. So that's a little quick one on climate science breakthrough. I can just jump out because it's a bit more human to not be sharing the screen the whole time. And if before I dive into the national emergency briefing, has anybody got any questions? Oh, incidentally, please follow and amplify and like and all that business. This whole business of climate communication just really, really relies on people getting behind it. But yes, if you've got any questions before I move on, happy to answer those.
I think it's a really key point of using art, comedy, and culture, music to amplify the musical message, sorry, the environmental message. And I love what you've done there. And another really key, key point is we have to give people some hope as well, and as well as the actual real truth about how bad it is, we need to give people a bit of hope that there's thousands of solutions projects as well, and that is something that the whole environmental movements needs to move to as well, because so many people feel disempowered when they're just bombarded with how bad it is. We have to give them some positivity with that people are doing things. If
Yeah,
we can build that into the message.
if I can just jump in, so the
Mm,
narrative arc, to use the sort of creatives
mm,
the term of how each one of our short films works is all the heavy, scary stuff comes first. Then we add a layer of outrage on top, because if you just scare people, obviously that
mm.
doesn't work. But if you add outrage, that turns it into action. If you look at river pollution, and then we always finish on the positives, which the reason I do what I do is because they're all there to be deployed. So we go on this arc of scare, 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 add some outrage because it's those people over there doing this, and then the end is always the same. We've got everything lined up. It's all possible. We can do it.
Nice. We do have the solutions if we get the spaces and make things happen. Helen's got a one there.
Yeah, I've got a request for everyone on this call. Please, when you go on the social media, you're probably all like me and you're busy doing Extinction Rebellion social media or Friend of the Earth social media or whatever, but put it in some local group, your local neighborhood group. Stick it in there so it's getting out of the bubble.
Nice, nice.
An
Uh,
amazing point. And just to add, if you go on our YouTube, if your local group is going to be okay with swearing, you can use the sweary ones, but we have PG versions as well. So you need to be selective. If it's the church group, then I would maybe suggest the PG versions might be more suitable.
just to say, the purpose of tonight is to try and get everyone tooled up to get their MPs to come on the 27th of November and community leaders. So hopefully towards the end of this, Nick can tell us exactly how we can get out to get these MPs and the things we can send, or it's on the website, check that out. And we're also talking about those that want to stay around for a breakout room at the end, just to split into groups of 4 or 5 and have a short conversation and then come back and feedback. How can we get the MPs to come to this to realise how critical it is, and what I liked the message was about, and the solutions as well.
So national emergency briefing. So I don't know whether you've come across this already, but the person behind this is actually my brother, Simon. So the funny thing here is we used to work together, and now we've come back round in full circle and we're working together again. But effectively, well, I've been doing my climate comedy. He's been working with mainly Zero Hour and sometimes MP Watch and doing a very similar thing. He's probably more deeply into the policy and the science, perhaps, than I am. But he started talking about this idea of a COVID style briefing where experts briefed MPs. And it bubbled away and he talked about it more and more. And then it's reached a point where he went and hired Westminster Central Hall, which I then realized it was becoming quite serious. So we effectively teamed up. And my creative partners from Climate Science Breakthrough joined as well. In order that we can turn this into something effective, because it's really designed not to be a piece of activism. This is designed to be and look like the establishment is doing this, and that's on purpose. And let me just take you through why. Um, so the idea is to hold this briefing, and it's really to get MPs to understand the science. And I don't know whether any of you have had the pleasure of writing to an MP, but you know full well that they're going to say, we're only 1% of emissions, the UK is leading, etc., etc. It's not really the biggest problem in the world. I've got other things to worry about. So we really need to get those people connected to the science, and we need to do that in a way that has a bit of a national moment to it, and we need to unite loads of campaigners around that. So that's what we're going to do. That's a mock-up of the inside of Westminster Central Hall. And we're also going to film the event, and so the event itself is the top-down effort, and the film of the event will be the grassroots effort coming in 2026. I don't have to tell you guys the problem, but you know, government action is falling far too short of what we need. I just get so frustrated when I hear, only 1% of emissions, or when I hear we've cut our emissions by 50% when that doesn't include imports or everything we've offshored or aviation or drax. It's
Or
it's
military.
it's the military. It's about 0.7% a year we've cut by, and the government aren't doing what we need. We all know that, but the government also is not informing the public of the seriousness of it. And we've got lots of campaigns, fantastic campaigns, but we're all doing slightly different things. The final point is quite important, and that was the point that kind of led me to Climate Science Translated, was that when you try and direct people who are not currently engaged, you don't really know where to send them, because some articles are just too damn depressing, but most of them are too detailed and too heavy or too specific. It'll just be about food, or it'll just be about I don't know, polar bears and coral reefs, but it's hard to send people to one place. So then the other idea is that the briefing becomes a hub for information. So we are not just doing a climate talk. This is the really important point. We are going to do the entire polycrisis, I suppose you could say. So every aspect of climate that affects our lives. So we start on the left here with the obvious ones, and there's my Kevin Anderson. I finally get to work with him after all that time. So climate and nature come first, because they have to, because that's what we're breaking. So Kevin, if you've come across him, he's all the speakers here have been chosen because they don't pull their punches. But Kevin does a very hard-hitting piece on exactly where we are, and Natalie Seddon, also on nature, does the same thing. And then we move that across into how that multiplies out when these things happen. So that leads to extreme weather. Hayley Fowler, you couldn't ask for a better person to delve into extreme weather and do it in a really visceral way that will really bring it home to people. And then obviously Tim Lenton, he's probably the top man in the world on tipping points. And he's going to do all the scary ones, but he's going to arc it over into the positive. All these talks end with the positive, which is the positive social tipping point, which he's just actually written a book about. And that's in a way what the whole event is trying to be, to create this positive social tipping point. And then we have two really interesting ones, health and food. And this is important because we're hopefully going to have people who aren't lefties or progressives in that room. We're going to have some quite serious people in that room who maybe think a lot of climate is quite ideological and maybe nice to have and not really that important. But when Professor Hugh Montgomery starts telling them about the complete collapse of the NHS, becomes quite visceral, and it brings it home to the realities of our daily lives, as politicians like to say. The same applies to food. You talk to someone who doesn't really see climate as a threat and say, have you ever thought we might run out of food? Those kind of conversations are all part of bringing it home. And then we're narrowing in now on national security. And this again is challenging and actually a tough one, isn't it? Because we're talking about social breakdown. But the gentleman we have, Lieutenant Richard Nugent, is the recently retired three-star general. He wrote the British military's preparedness plan for climate breakdown, and you couldn't get more serious than that. So if we are really going to get the people that we're aiming to get in this room, who control the money and all the big decisions, this is the kind of thing that will reach them. And that's why it's there. And at the end, and very crucially at the end, is affordability, because I'm sure you've noticed what happens in a climate conversation on TV and radio. They have the conversation, and then it moves to, well, unfortunately, we can't afford to deal with that, or it moves to, well, ordinary people can't afford this. And we really need to take this one head on. Ordinary people should not have to afford this. And the other critical one is, I mean, this is the Climate Change Committee's own data. Decarbonizing everything will cost about 300 billion. If you cast your mind back to when the energy crisis hit, the government casually put aside 150 billion without even blinking to cap energy prices. So the money is there, the money exists. We can spend that money. And the other thing about the 310 billion, I think it is it's about 40% of the wealth of the top 20 families in the UK. So again, the money is there. But we as a campaign, we're staying non-partisan, so we may not lean into that one. But this is an important one. Once we reach the point where we've decarbonised everything, again, this is the Climate Change Committee's own number, we save nearly 40 billion every year, which is just extraordinary. So it's not a cost, it's an investment. And it's the reason why it saves us all this money is because everything that's electrified is more efficient. There are less people in hospital because of respiratory diseases. So it's an absolute win-win. So it's really critical that we address that economics point. And then overriding all this, we've got Mike Berners-Lee, who is our sort of chair, who's going to hold the whole thing together and do a wrap up at the end. And I can tell you, hot off the press, that we've got Chris Packham doing our intro, our warm-up act, if you like.
Wow, all-star cast.
An all-star cast. Yeah, absolutely. So let me just move to the next slide. So there you go, opening statement by Chris. Now we're being really rigid on time because we know that getting MPs to anything is quite challenging. Unfortunately for us, it's the budget the day before, which wasn't planned. And we were not unable to move the event once we found out this issue. However, we know full well that the budget will not address the issues. And so there is a hook and a storyline there that we're now having the briefing. But we'll just finish COP as well. So we're having the briefing that was not addressed, where COP did not address the issue, and where the budget did not address the issue. And again, we're also focusing in on the cost of living and affordability, which hopefully we can hook into the budget. So we had the talks, 90 minutes, and then the MPs, if they need to, they can scoot off, and then there's questions, and then our experts split up, and people can approach them and talk to them in groups, and there's a whole period of time we're looking at where there's an informal question process that happens there. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to move out of the bubble and into the mainstream. And so this is a sort of famous graph about the early adopters of technology or other things in social sort of terms, though we need to jump them across that chasm and take this into the mainstream. And that is really why we're targeting all these influential people who simply don't understand the seriousness of the issue. What does success look like? Well, once again, getting on Good Morning Britain would be incredible. You've got leading figures, progressive figures actually, like James O'Brien, Carol Vorderman, the newsagents. These people never talk about climate. If they do talk about climate, I wouldn't say they incorrectly talk about it. They just quickly move on because they don't know how to talk about it. So we need this sort of national moment where we take it away from people on the fringes like us, the campaigners, and move it into the mainstream so they can talk about it. And then we also need to create this grassroots movement where the pressure is overwhelming for MPs. And so they have to take meaningful action. I think one thing that's powerful for me is we're going to film this event. And so the people will be able to watch or witness, if you like, their MP hearing the science directly. And I think that bearing witness element is quite powerful. So when your MP turns around to you, if you go and see them later on, they say, "Oh, it's fine. You don't need it. We're not," the usual story. You can refer back, say, "No, I saw you hear about the collapse of the NHS. I saw you hear about food shortages, and I watched that. And so you now need to tell me something that is in proportion with what I know that you now know." The organization behind it, we kind of touched on, but my brother and myself, my colleagues from Climate Science Breakthrough, who are part of the Utopia Bureau, my brother, and primarily my brother, also me, funders as well. And we've done really well with support. So it's effective coalition. We've got National Trust behind us, the Royal Meteorological Society, the Royal Ecological Society, the Society of Biology, Exeter University, Newcastle University, the Church of England, the Catholic Church, lots of faith groups actually. One thing that's interesting about the film, we talked to the faith groups about the film, and both the Catholic Church and the Church of England suggested that maybe we could show the film in the cathedrals. So we were quite blown away by that. And then we had a really, really knowledgeable advisors covering all sections of everything really. So we've got John Marsham from Exeter, from the Met Office. We've got George Marshall, who literally wrote the book on climate communication. Sandy Trust is fantastic. He's from the Institute of Actuaries. These the most conservatively sensible people on the planet. These are the people who measure risk. So the people behind the insurance industry. If you haven't looked at their reports, you really should. These are the people that spell out in clear terms that if we carry on as we are, by 2070, global GDP will be 50% less.
Yeah. Nick, who mentioned showing it in the cathedrals? Sorry to jump in that. Who mentioned showing the
The
film in the
Church of England
cathedral?
and the Catholic Church. Now,
I've talked about that, have they? Because we want to get people's assemblies set up in the churches
well,
and
listen,
cathedrals.
I'm telling you this now in good faith, but we haven't exactly nailed this because what we're doing is we're getting the supporters, we're building the event, and once we've got the film, once the dust has settled from the event, we'll start talking to people about showing it and where they might show it. But that was something that certainly came up in conversation, yes.
Maybe because Truro Cathedral, the Truro CEC group managed to get a people's assembly about the climate in the cathedral. Possibly could show this
Fantastic.
film and have an assembly afterwards. What can we do? How can we organise locally?
Absolutely. Well, we'll come to the film, but if we the more places we can get it, the better, right? And
Mhm.
a little bit on our visual identity, and you may have noticed we have a flag in our logo, and we created that flag, I would tell you, before the issues cropped up with the flag, but it's for good reason. We are we have to work very hard not to be ignored by the press. It's another climate, a bunch of climate people yakking away, dooming or whatever. If we have maybe some celebrities coming, it'll maybe is some virtue signaling. You can imagine the potential headlines or complete lack of headlines. So we've worked quite hard to create uh, an identity that's slightly controversial, and we've done that on purpose. So effectively, we're leaning into giving the briefing that the government should be giving. So we are behaving like the government. We did toy with using the government crest, but we spoke to some legal people and they scared us, so we abandoned that idea. Um, and it's, again, some of the visual references from COVID. And I know there's lots of detractors there, but essentially the vast majority of the population took an issue extremely seriously because qualified experts stood up in front of lecterns and told us things. Um, Whatever else you might think of COVID, it certainly had impact. So we were leaning into some of that. The hall itself is a fascinating place. I don't know whether you know it. It's really close to Parliament, so the MPs have got no excuse. But it just happens to be the venue of the first ever UN meeting in 1946. So we couldn't really lean in more to being the establishment than choosing this venue. And again, from the outset, we're trying to build in the headlines, if you like, because we're very easy to ignore, and the press will really probably preferably ignore us. So we're touching on national security, food impacts. Uh, we're a world first, and this is one that's genuinely true because all the people doing this, all our experts are obviously working for free, are incredibly frustrated they're not being listened to. So this is one of the reasons why my brother and we haven't created an organization. This is just a project because this is genuinely all about those experts. They need to be heard by the people that make decisions. And so effectively, that's what we're doing. It's a functional event. It's not marketing. It's not a gig. It's an emergency. But we will lean in a little bit to the TED Talks in that they'll be short and snappy and clearly communicated. I don't know whether any scientists on this call, but scientists by their own admission will admit they put too many words and graphs on screens when they do presentations. So we're managing all that. And then this is an important one. And this is where some of you might be able to help. We are on this crazy mission, and I am or we're all slightly frazzled from trying to achieve it, of trying to get all the people that fit that list on the screen you see there into the room. And I think that's helped by having the venue we've got. That's helped by having the speakers we've got, and the way we've framed the whole style of it. And so we have a public relations firm targeting the MPs, and we'll come to that. But also we're targeting metro mayors, council leaders, and all these people. Now, what is happening is because we can't invite those people quick enough, and also we are not known to those people. What's happening is people are popping up out of these different sectors. Like I spoke to someone from a reasonable sized law firm today, someone from finance, someone from the public sector, NHS. Some of our experts have their own ways in, and they're coming along and they're becoming our sort of surrogates because they're well connected. So our finance surrogate used to be very senior and knows all the CEOs. So those kind of people are now going out there saying, you really need to come to this event. And hopefully we will get 850 is the capacity and we'll fill that. We can extend it. It's 1,400, 1,500. So if we keep building, we will extend it. But I'm sure you all also understand that what we don't want to do is fill this with people from the bubble. We could fill it with people from the bubble tomorrow. We all us lot, everyone you know who is into climate, we'd all pile in there and hear what we probably already know, and no one else would know about it. So there's almost a ban on any eco people, in effect, being there. Obviously, there will be some there, but you see the point that we're trying to reach the people that don't know, or the people that think they know that need to know what they really need to know. And then we're going to be doing some carrot and stick. So we're going to sort of try and, I don't know whether this one's going to be pulled off actually, but the idea was a constituency map on the website showing where MPs have confirmed and where they haven't. We do have a postcode lookup. We can come to that, but it's very easy to put the postcode in and see if your MP
Love it.
is coming already. And then anyone we can get, and Chris Packham's hopefully going to help us with this, is going to start shouting about it on social media. And if you imagine this, if an MP gets 3 invites in their constituency from 3 dedicated activists, they're probably going to ignore it. But if they're swamped with invites and they see it all over social media, then I think we might succeed. At the moment, we've got an endorsement from Lord Deben, we've got an endorsement from Michael Mann, and Professor Joanna Haigh. Between you and me, I know this is going on YouTube, we might get an endorsement from Al Gore, but I'm just keeping everything crossed for that. But effectively, the more outward noise we make, the more likelihood we have that those MPs will think, I better go, because if I don't, people will say, why weren't you there? A little bit on the talks themselves. They're going to be 10 minutes, so they're quite short and snappy. And again, a bit like our climate comedy, it's the problem and the pathway. So we start with the stuff that you really should know, and you're a decision maker, you're obliged to know, but also then we quickly move to the pathways out of it. And we've got lots of people who are very adept at, communication to work with the climate scientists to make sure that this comes across well. We are making some recommendations. We're not making any policy recommendations. That's really crucial, because if we did, none of these supporters that we have would probably support us. We've got Greenpeace, RSPB are being quite receptive, WWF are being receptive. But if we had our own policies, that would be conflicting with all their objectives. So we're doing recommendations, which is effectively meaning we want science-led action. We want this briefing repeated for the people who are not there. We want public information campaigns, which taps into XR's Tell the Truth. And we're also working with carbon literacy to make sure all these civil servants and politicians have actually been trained. And number 5 there is, which is the image, a climate cobra. That's a press hook. It might not be that it's a climate cobra we need, but I can tell you, I have it on good authority, that climate is dealt with in DEFRA, where the National Security Council deals with nuclear war, Russia, the future of work, but it doesn't deal with climate. So that some of the most important conversations are about climate, are they not? And they're not taking place in the right department. So that number 5 is us trying to get government to put the right people on this issue. Now the grassroots campaign, because this is effective. That was the top down, this is the bottom up. So we film the thing. So every talk is filmed. All the talks we filmed and put on the website in full. So you'll be able to watch the food talk, the health talk, the nature talk. But more importantly, we're going to wrap the whole thing up into a documentary style film, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. And it will feature the key clips of the talks, but it will also feature reactions of people who were there. So we'll get ordinary members of the public, maybe we'll get some firefighters, maybe we'll get the scientists themselves explaining how this makes them feel, which is really important. You do the science bit, but then on camera you say, I am actually genuinely really scared. That humanizes the science bit. If we're lucky and we get some celebs there, we might get some celebs reacting to this as well. And we package all that up into a film. Apologies, there's too much on that screen, isn't there? And we then go and work with all the partners who are interested in showing that film. But this is the idea. You hold an event, the film is purposefully not that long. You watch the film, but critically, you invite the MP to watch it with you, and you invite anyone working in science, like ecology, anything related to the subject matters, someone from the NHS, and then you use that for the conversations you're already having. But what you've got there, you've got all the latest information in it, in all its true scary form, but also with all the pathways to solving it. And you've got the whole sort of background campaign of this thing going around the country. We've had people like Greenpeace, Surface Against Sewage, Transition Town, saying they'd show it, National Trust, possibly showing it in all their properties. Plenty of universities saying they'll show it on their campuses. Now, it's all long shot stuff, but until someone actually nails this down, it isn't real. These are all genuine conversations. So I'm saying there's quite a lot of work probably to make it all happen. But if we make enough noise on the day, I think we've got a good chance of this film rolling out. We also have science outreach. Dr. Alison Green is connecting in with all the universities to make sure they know about this, and we've got a letter about this event being signed by scientists. We're at 300 or 400 at the moment. We really would like to get to 1,000 of these scientists, and it just creates a little bit of extra press around the event. We might follow with a booklet. The one featured in that visual is an emergency preparedness booklet in Sweden. And I can, we're playing with these concepts again, but we're trying to deliver a public information that the government's not delivering. And so if we produce something, we'll probably print it and make it look a little bit like the government. But that would all come after the event. And the outputs of the event, well, this is where we lead into having a conversation, but the outputs are we are pushing like mad on social media, which I can tell you, and many of you will know, this is so much more difficult these days. That's to build the support for the MPs. But following the event, we will have all these clips on our YouTube and our website. All our speakers will be interviewed. So there's the whole body of work there will be really useful. And our website carries this postcode checker. It's on the homepage. You literally drop onto the website and you can look up your MP in minutes. And that just jumps through the different audiences, going from the event, the media around the event, all our ambassadors, all people like you spreading the word, the film, and all reaching around back to the public. So in effect, by the end of it, we should have shifted the conversation enough so people have a much more in-depth knowledge of climate risks, timescales, and the solutions. And I just quickly threw that together to prompt discussion, really, as to what you can do. And if I could just run through, we've got a couple of trailers out there on social media, and I can share a supporter pack with you. They're easy to post on social media, or you can go onto our social media accounts and just repost what we're already posting. All that traffic is so critical because the MPs who haven't made their minds up will be watching this and seeing whether it's becoming something or not, whether it's becoming something they can miss or not miss or can't afford to miss. And the visual on the right here, let me go back up, is we've done something we think is a first. So we have made 650 individual videos featuring every single MP. And so we have our trailer that we launched with visuals about the crisis and is your MP attending and all about the event. But there is now one for every MP. I can't give you a delivery solution for this process yet because we're just trying to map all that out. But effectively, we're looking for people in every constituency to send their MP their own bespoke video invite to the event. And I just think, or we just think, this will create an interesting bit of noise because we don't think it's been done before. So rather than the usual generalized information on social media, this will be something that relates to every single MP out there. And so we'll be able to share that soon, but we'll effectively have a library, probably in a Google Sheet. You go down, find your MP, find your constituency, click on the link, and it will take you to YouTube where you can then pick up that link. And then the idea is you email that to your MP saying, I've got your personalized invite for this event, and I would really like you to turn up. And I think it'll be just that little bit harder for them to refuse something like that. So I'm going to unshare my screen now because that's the end of the slideshow. And so effectively it's over to you guys.
Brilliant. Nick, thank you so much for that. That was really well thought out, really powerful. What a journey from the arts and the comedy of climate science and getting it in more understandable forms to people too. That is such a well thought out project, and anything our climate emergency network and our activism movements of 35 years can do to help our network is at your disposal. I think that is absolutely, you are doing the government's job for them. This is a national emergency briefing that should be going out on all channels of television 7 years ago and getting people together to, to work together. The eco war we've been aware of as activists for many years. How can we actually take action together, folks, is one of the big questions here. There's been post World War One, there was big plans to World War Two, sorry, the Marshall Plan. How can we all get together and mobilize really to prepare for what's coming and defend the environment and work on some solutions? Okay, Nick, thank you so much for coming. Really thought-provoking, very well thought out campaign. As I said earlier, anything our networks can do to help support, promote and amplify this, let's have a chat independently afterwards. Over to you for a final summary or anything you want to say at the end. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you. Just to say a humble thanks for having me. I've genuinely enjoyed every minute. I think it's really useful. It's always useful actually for me to talk it through each time because that's a process in its own right. And actually this bit at the end of how can we help and specifically what can we do has also been helpful because that's helped me rationalize some of the things we need to do. But leave it with me that we'll be working to make sure these MP invites are highly shareable. In the meantime, find us on whatever social media channel you use and any others that you don't regularly use. And just liking and sharing is gold dust because it's so difficult to get traction unless you're a hugely famous celebrity. So all the help you can give is genuinely appreciated. And thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Everyone network it, National Emergency Briefing, get your MPs involved. And when the film is out, book a hall, do it at your local, one of the 30 odd climate emergency centres. Go and talk to your local church, football club, rugby stadium, whatever it is. I think great point there from Jen. Go to where people are at.
Is there a date? Is there a date for this? Is there a date set?
27th November, Nick, is the actual briefing.
27th of November, yes.
27th of November.
And how soon after might the film be out?
The film will be out in 2026. I think we'll be sleeping for most of the rest of December.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. All right, guys.
Can we just thank you so much to you, Nick. It's absolutely fantastic what you're doing here. And just to say to everyone, the WhatsApp group, in my opinion, is one of the most uplifting WhatsApp groups you could wish to be in because it's got so many solutions in it and people are really helping each other.
I think I need to get on this WhatsApp group.
Yeah, get onto the WhatsApp group, Nick. Great to have you there. Great to have you all there.
Thanks, guys.